People dream of getting rich. Fancy vacations, luxury toys, never-ending fun. Sounds perfect, right? But what if I told you that chasing wealth might just make you miserable? Because the real question isn't so much how to build wealth, it's why you want it in the first place. And so we'll start today's episode with a tale of two millionaires. Now, this is from the introduction of The Psychology of Money. So the two millionaires. The first is Ronald James Reed. He was an investor, a janitor, a gas station attendant, and philanthropist. He was born in 1921 in a remote area of Vermont, and he was just dirt poor. He came from a poor farming family. He ended up walking to high school 4 miles each way, so the guy was pretty dedicated to his education. He was the first member of his family to graduate high school. He ended up serving in the Army during World War II, and then after the war, returned to Vermont, and he spends 25 years as a gas station attendant and a mechanic. He ended up retiring for 1 year in 1979 at age 58, but I guess he got bored because he started a part-time job as a janitor at JCPenney, and he worked there for 17 years. He ended up retiring again in 1997 at age 76. He'd go on to live another 17 years. He died in 2014 at the age of 92. Now, he lived a humble life, but in his will, Ronald Reed gave instructions to distribute $8 million of funds. He ended up leaving $2 million to his stepkids, $1.2 million to his local library, and $4.8 million to a local hospital. Now, people were baffled. The local folks were just like, where did all that money come from? Because he didn't win the lottery. He didn't have any inheritance because he came from a poor farming family, and he had a humble career. He worked at a gas station. But the reality is that he saved little by little over time, and he invested. And decades later, his small investments compounded over time to go to $8 million. And now there's the second millionaire, Richard Fuscone. This was a Harvard-educated Merrill Lynch exec with an MBA. He was regarded as a titan of finance. He was praised for his business savvy, his leadership, his judgment, and personal integrity. He was so successful, he retired in his 40s to become a philanthropist. But he was not like Ronald Reed. You see, everything fell apart for Richard in the mid-2000s. He had ended up borrowing money heavily to expand his 18,000 square foot home in Connecticut. That mansion had 11 bathrooms, 2 elevators, 2 pools, and a 7-car garage. It cost more than $90,000 a month to maintain. But the 2008 real estate market crashed and the economy tanked. He ended up losing his houses in Florida. He filed for bankruptcy trying to keep his main mansion. He ended up losing it all, and then the creditors picked over the remains. Now, there's a stark contrast between these two millionaires. Now, Ronald, no college degree, no training, no experience, no connections. He was just simply a good steward of the resources that he had. And then Richard, he had all the advantages of education, pedigree, connections, position, but he lived a flashy lifestyle and ended up losing everything. So what was the difference? I would say it's their reason for building wealth. Today, we're just asking a simple question. What is your why for building wealth? I'm Todd, and I'm here with James. Hey, James.
Good morning, Todd. Yeah, looking forward to today.
Same.
How are you doing this morning?
I am well, man. Looking forward to this discussion, man. Last episode, we talked about retirement crisis in America, and seems like a good time to just dig into if we're planning to build wealth. Why would you want to do that in the first place? Because, there are some negative connotations to being a rich guy. I don't necessarily want to be rich, but I want to be comfortable.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of negative sentiment towards folks that are wealthy. And I think in some parts for good reason.
Right.
Because it does come down to kind of what are you doing with that money? And I agree. I just ideally would like to be in a position to not have to worry about or have anxiety around money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff, man.
So where do we go astray with this wealth conversation?
Yeah, I think especially here in America, one issue that we run into with wealth is this lure of fast and easy riches. And there's an ancient principle at play here. And it says this: wealth gained hastily will dwindle. And so you have to think about that if you're seeking fast money and just making it real easy with minimal effort. Because there's kind of this good and bad side of modern capitalism. On the good side, we brought millions of people out of poverty through the capitalist system. Our free markets generate wealth. In recent decades, we've just had this rapid advancement in technology, and we have things available to us today because of capitalism that were unheard of just a few hundred years ago. I mean, starting back when you think about the printing press, that gave us books. And then education gave us the ability to read those books. And then over time, with the advancement of technology, we've just got access to information today like no other time in human history. We live comfortable lives with all of our basic needs met, so we have free time and we don't have to scrape out an existence anymore. That's the good side of it, but there are some negative sides of capitalism. When we start thinking about America and all of the stuff that we have as people, we ended up comparing ourselves to others. That generates envy. When we talk about envy, we're talking about feelings of discontent or resentful when someone has a lot more than us, whether that's possessions, talents, or abilities, maybe some fame. We look at others and we envy what they have. And that envy brings temptation to take shortcuts. And so that's how we fall prey to these get-rich-quick schemes, maybe even unethical business practices if you're a business owner. Or if you work a regular job, maybe you can fall prey to seeking to get ahead at the expense of others. And at the worst case scenario, we're talking criminal behavior to try to get money. So envy brings that temptation to take those shortcuts.
Yeah. But is capitalism really to blame? Or
So
are you
yeah.
arguing for socialism, Todd?
No. Negative on that one.
So what's at the core of its bad behavior?
I'm not blaming capitalism for the bad side of what takes place. I say that because envy, it's an ugly sin that existed way before capitalism came into existence. I mean, if you think about human history, we've always killed each other out of a desire to have more. An example of that would be the Yuan dynasty. This was the shortest dynasty in the history of China. It was just a little bit over 100 years. It began in the year 1260 by Kublai Khan. This was Genghis Khan's grandson. This dynasty was just utterly chaotic. There was constant warring between tribes. There was political infighting and famines. The people of the Yuan dynasty were just known for being harshly bitter towards each other and outsiders. And during that 100-year dynasty, over 30 million people died. That's war, famine, all kinds of things. That's a lot of people. And we've been acting like this long before capitalism came into existence. So I don't blame capitalism for bad behavior. And there's another principle at play here. Greedy people who seek gain by scamming others, they bring trouble on themselves and their entire families. Now, at best, they can't enjoy their wealth. And at worst, they will lose at life. And this applies under any economy.
Yeah. I have witnessed folks that have been caught up in that. And it's not pretty.
It's ugly. The ugly side of humanity.
So what's kind of going on inside of us that brings up that feeling to desire fast and easy money?
I think it's just loving the trappings of wealth, loving stuff. And as I was thinking through this, I remembered, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, this young man knocked on my door selling cleaning products. A company, their game was to hire these young kids and send them out into the neighborhoods and sell overpriced cleaning goods because they were just appealing to your, I want to help. I want to help this kid. So I'm going to buy this bottle of cleaning product for $40 when I can get it for $5 at Walmart. So, but this kid, he was well-spoken. He was enthusiastic. I was instantly drawn to this young man. My heart went out to him because he was just overall a very earnest and humble young man. And he was competing for a scholarship. And normally I don't like door-to-door salesmen, but instantly I felt a connection to this kid because he came from poverty, first off. And, I can kind of relate to that. But when he was talking, he just said, "Hey, sir, I'm out here working so I can have a house just like yours someday." And at that point, I just went, dude, don't work for that. Don't work to acquire stuff. And by the way, I don't have a huge house. I'm not rich. I live in a middle-class neighborhood in the Raleigh area. So I'm not flexing here. I'm just saying it was a young kid and he was just trying to appeal to me. But anyways, I just told him, I said, dude, don't work to acquire stuff. This house, there's a lot of maintenance on it. I have to pay taxes on it. And it's generally a cost. There is cost associated with owning property or any stuff. What struck me though was this kid. He was focused on the trappings of wealth. And I just said, how did he get to that place? He's a good kid, but I would just submit that generally we're bombarded with advertising that stokes our emotion and our desire for things. And that's what can easily lead us astray. And then when you think about gaining riches, you have these guys and girls on the internet, they sell their system, buy my class or buy this for me. And they do it while sitting on a jet or standing next to some luxury car and showing you all the stuff that they have. And then obviously sex sells. And so oftentimes they'll have women all around them while they're trying to sell. You can have all this stuff and you'll have all these women after you and all this stuff. They're usually appealing to men. But the example of this from today would be, I would say, Andrew Tate. He's a 35-year-old former kickboxer. He was born in Chicago and he grew up in England. He's got this strange accent that's kind of a mix between, it sounds British, but I'm not really sure. But anyways, born in Chicago, grew up in England, and he's got millions of social media followers. And I just went through his Twitter feed and just looked through some stuff and some of the videos he posted up there. He has a very high view of himself. He comes across to me like pompous and arrogant and just generally angry. But what I'm seeing in his social media posts is he is appealing to the disillusionment of young men, and that stokes their anger. And so what he's doing is channeling people to his online businesses. His first business, I did some research on him. His first business was actually a webcam business based out of Romania. He had about 75 women working for him as contractors. And what they did is they participated in live chats with men, and they ended up telling the men sob stories to get them to send money. But the men had no idea that they were working for Andrew Tate, and that money was going straight to Andrew Tate's company. At the peak of that company, they were making about $600,000 a month. And then Tate, when he was interviewed about it, he called it a total scam. And I'm just laughing about that. It's like this dude's out there preying on lonely men willing to trade money for status with a nameless, faceless lady. Now, he didn't actually have a product or a service. He was just appealing to people's desires. So that was his first business. And today he's got somewhat of a little bit more legit business model where he's got a couple of websites. One's Hustlers University and the other one is The Real World. These are monthly subscription services. And he has phrases. I went to the websites and he has phrases like rewire your mind for success. You can earn money online with just Wi-Fi and a phone. Escape the matrix. You can have money, freedom, and lifestyle. So he's preying on people's desire to live a billionaire lifestyle. So he got very rich catering to human emotion and desire. And so I think a lot of that, these advertisements, they know how people work. And so they appeal to those desires. I just have to stop and go, if these folks that are selling these courses or whatever these things are online, if they got rich doing the thing that they're talking about, why the hard sell? The truth is, they got rich selling their course or subscription. That's how they got rich. I just thinking about, this is a guy that I knew back in the 1980s. He was an educator, and we didn't have the internet back in that time. But what he did was he posted an ad out in the local newspaper, and he said, hey, just send me $5 and I will send you a package to help you become a better writer. So you can build a business, becoming an author and all this other stuff. And people would send their $5, and then he would just send them a letter back with a list of things like, hey, go buy a thesaurus, go buy this and go buy that. Just basically gather the tools that you would need to be able to write legibly. And he was making some decent money off that. But he appealed to people's desire to get out of their current situation and get the stuff. That's how he did it. So people, we want the trappings. That's why we've seen this emergence of the fake rich. This is our basic desire. It's like we see people with big houses, cars, and lots of money, and we desire the respect and admiration that they get. And so a lot of people, they want that respect and admiration, but they don't have the money. So they end up buying luxury goods on credit. I even heard about a guy that rented luxury cars just to create an image that he is rich. That's dangerous, right? Because we're just trying to impress others. A lot of these folks just end up dying broke, and their families have to post up a GoFundMe to pay for their funeral expenses. So here's the truth. While we're out here trying to gain respect through the trappings of wealth, other people really aren't thinking of you. And from the book I referenced earlier, Psychology of Money, the author, he worked as a valet at one point, and he was parking luxury cars for these rich people. And then he wanted that for himself. And he realized that he wanted that respect and admiration because he thought that those people driving up in those cars were getting that admiration and respect. But he realized he wasn't even thinking about those people. He didn't care. He didn't know their names. He didn't care who they were. All he knew was that they were driving those cars. So he wanted the stuff that they had so that he could get what he perceived as admiration and respect. And that was a light bulb moment for him. The fake rich. We've had that pop up because people want the trappings of wealth. It is a trap, right? And so what's the solution to that? I just submit that you need to find a way to realize you have enough. And that comes straight from the book, Psychology of Money. Let me read a quote. I've got a quote here from Psychology of Money. He said this: at a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island, Kurt Vonnegut informs his pal, Joseph Heller, that their host, a hedge fund manager, he had made more money in a single day than Heller had earned from his wildly popular novel, Catch-22, over its whole history. So Heller, the author of the book Catch-22, he just responds, well, yeah, but I've got something he'll never have. Enough. So that was Morgan Housel from The Psychology of Money. And his take on that story is this. He's like, look, modern capitalism, it's a pro at two things: generating wealth and generating envy. Perhaps they go hand in hand. Wanting to surpass your peers can be a fuel of hard work, but life isn't any fun without a sense of enough. Happiness, as it said, is just results minus expectations. That's the author's take on that story.
Yeah. Wow. So what is a sense of enough?
That's a deep one because I'm sitting here thinking, well, what is enough for me? I'm still trying to get there, but it's, yeah, I mean, you know, dissatisfaction with where I am a lot. I'm struggling with that, but just reading what Morgan said here, the author, he said enough is just realizing that an insatiable appetite for more, it's going to push you to the point of regret. And that hit home when I read that, because beyond a certain point, it's just not worth it to have any more wealth. And the trick is getting to the place in your mind where you simply have enough. I was thinking about this, and as I'm thinking about it, the story of Khabib Nurmagomedov, he was the undefeated UFC champion who quit after his last fight and just left the UFC. Now, Dana White, who's head of UFC, offered him $100 million to come back and fight again. Khabib, without even hesitating, rejected the offer. He said he wouldn't come back to the UFC for any price. And then on Khabib's Twitter feed, I read this. He says, in Russia, if people have little things, they are happy. People do not make $5,000 or $10,000 a month. Where I'm from, Dagestan, we don't need much. Dana was asking me, bro, why didn't you ever ask me how much I was going to pay you to come back? It doesn't matter. If you want $100 million, I don't care. You know why? Because I'm from Dagestan and we are traditional. Talking to our mothers is everything to us. I just want to help people, inspire people, spend time with my family, with my mother, with my children, and just be a good person. That's my goal. So Khabib's why for fighting in the UFC wasn't for money or the stuff it can buy. So another principle at play here, for this is an ancient principle. The love of money is the root of all evil. This desire for more, it's very destructive because you never have enough.
Yeah. And I hate it when putting people short in that too. Money is the root of all evil. It is not the money.
Right.
It is the love of the money. And, it's so easy to get caught up in that and to just want stuff. But I've, at my age and stage, and realizing stuff is nice, but at the same time, too much stuff brings with it its own hassles. And God, it's like, where do you put the stuff? I mean, that's right. It's like we know folks that like rent storage units to put the stuff in. It's like you basically bought another house for your stuff. I mean, that's essentially what a storage unit is. It's like, yeah.
The self-storage business is huge in America.
It is monstrous. Yeah.
I mean, in our area, we've got self-storage places, brand new ones cropping up all over the place.
Yeah.
Because we just have so much stuff.
And I love it. They're advertised as, heated and cooled storage units.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
This is where we're at now.
We have stuff.
We have stuff.
It's a burden, man. I've got too much stuff. It's like my wife and I are at the point where we're like, ugh, we got to get rid of our stuff so that we don't have this when we're old. I'm like, yeah, it's a burden. So
Yeah.
the stuff, not so good. It's not what we thought it would be.
All right. So now the question is, how do we change our mindset about the money and the subsequent stuff?
I think we have to understand how we're built as human beings. And if you look at how we relate to money, it's hugely driven by emotion. That's kind of the premise behind the book Psychology of Money. And he gives some examples in the book, but things like bad economic data, that ends up with a huge sell-off in the stock market. People are like, ah, and they go ahead and sell everything off. Now, smart investors are like, okay, cool, I'm just going to stay in the market, and it's going to go up and down, but generally it's going to trend upward. And if you think about the Great Depression, there was a huge panic to get money out of the banks at the time. And so there was a run on the banks, unemployment went up, businesses were going out, people were starving, they had no money, they were poor and hungry. And this downturn in the market today, if we see that, we start seeing people cashing out their 401ks. That's all driven by emotion. And in a previous episode, we talked about the lottery, and people buy lottery tickets. It's mostly poor folks. And if you think about the psychology of that, you have poor people, nothing to lose. They're just trying to eke out an existence. And so that ticket psychologically becomes their slim chance of getting out. But that's an emotional response to money and putting, on average, $600 a year into lottery tickets. And then when you think about the middle class, we've coined the phrase retail therapy because buying stuff makes us feel better. And going on Amazon and just searching and just buying stuff that we don't need. We do that. I'm guilty of it, so I'm not excluding myself here. But that's how we relate to money. We're hugely driven by emotion. And so we have to dig into that. Now, why are we driven by emotion? It's because of how we're built as human beings. We're composed of like three parts: our mind, our heart, and our body. And if you think about the mind, this is our intellect. This is, the seat of our thoughts, how we operate, how we view the world, and how we perceive things around us. That's our mind. Now our heart, that's our emotional center. It's kind of our personality, but it's emotions. That's our heart. And then we have our body. Now this is our physical ability to act in the world, and it is how we carry out our behaviors. It's what we do. That's our body. So we have the mind, the heart, and the body. And what our minds do is they ascribe meaning to things like stuff or the trappings of wealth. And what we find meaningful drives emotion, and that emotion drives behavior. So behavior is the net result of what happens in our mind and our heart. And we have to invest time, energy, and focused thought if we want to change the way we think about money and anything in general. And we need to shift away from just wanting stuff to viewing money as a tool.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, because is money serving us, or are we serving the money? So
are we slaves to money? That's a good one, man. I like it.
So you said something there. So can you flesh out what it means by focused thought?
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks on this one, right? Remember, we're composed of mind, heart, body. What your mind values, that's going to stir your emotions. And that stirring of emotion drives our behavior. And this is how it plays out. And I'll give an example with myself. I'm just passively scrolling the internet, sitting on the couch at night, just getting those dopamine hits from, these short little videos and whatnot. But what I'm doing is I'm feeding my mind. And then an online ad pops up with a guy sitting in a jet. He's appealing to my emotion. And he says, "Are you tired of the 9-to-5 grind with all of its drudgery?" And my emotions are stirred and I go, yes. I don't want to work a 9-to-5 job. I actually have a decent job and it's a good people I work with, but he's appealing to my emotions and I'm finding things to be not happy about in my life. And then the ad preys on that and he says, "Well, buy my online course." And so my behavior is driven by that emotion. And I end up buying the online program. So that's how I act. But then I end up never doing the online program because it's like, oh, the emotion passed. It was a fleeting thought. That emotion drove me to purchase, but it just wasn't permanent. It wasn't really there. And so my emotions were stirred without too much going on in the intellect. And that was a bad thing. So ended up buying a course or whatever, not an expensive course, because they always price it at the point where you're like, you know what, I'll spend $10 on this because blah, blah, blah. And then you end up, it's wasted money. So that's an example of how this stuff plays out. A lot of times advertising appeals directly to the emotion and the brain. Yes, emotion. That's what advertising often caters to. But we need to shape our emotions. I submit this to you. Shape your emotions by engaging your mind, your intellect. And you have to do this by asking yourself a series of why questions. The next time something like this comes up, what I do is I take myself through these why questions. I say, and here's an example. Why do you want this program? Answer, because I want to escape corporate America. Okay, well, why escape corporate America? Oh, I'm just a resource to be consumed by the machine for profit. It's just crushing my soul. I want to do something meaningful with purpose. Okay, so that's the emotion talking here. So why will this online program give you meaning? And then the answer, well, the program won't, but it'll help me escape so I can find meaning. So keep asking yourself the questions. Okay, well, why is your corporate job to blame for a lack of meaning in your life? The answer might be, because I'm looking externally for meaning. And this is where you get down to the root issue. I'm looking externally for meaning, expecting my job, my employer, to create it for me. I'm outsourcing my fulfillment to a faceless entity and just this nebulous concept of freedom. So then the question is, well, shouldn't you just find meaning right where you are in life? Bingo. I've hit pay dirt. And going through that process in my head, that really changed my outlook on my 9-to-5 job. And it really helped me to find fulfillment and satisfaction right here where I am. But when you're asking yourself these why questions, you need to write it down in a journal. And I think in a future episode, we're going to get a little bit more in depth on that. But I'll just tell you this, the physical motion of the tactile touch of pen and paper and writing, it incorporates this additional sense of touch into the mix. And so when you're thinking and you're writing, it's like chiseling the lesson into your mind. And it keeps you thinking about it long after you've stepped away and you're going about your day. So then it's not just a fleeting thought. That's how you actually create change in yourself. That is focused thought, asking yourself the questions, writing them down so that you can come back to them. So here's the takeaway. You're not going to do anything that your mind does not approve of. And the intermediary between your mind and behavior is emotion. Your intellect stirs that emotion. Emotion drives behavior. So if you're unhappy in your current situation, stop doing things and get back to your own thoughts. So I just submit that you need to approach it honestly and ask those why questions. Write it down, get it ingrained in your mind, and just pay attention to the new things you're going to discover after you do that.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking as you're reading through that list of questions and the answers that you gave, you could consider like making a course out of that and selling it.
Oh, wow.
Just to say it there.
Buy my course online and you can escape the 9-to-5. Oh, we've fallen into the trap. No,
we have
that's
fallen
a good
right into the trap.
Yeah.
No, but journaling's big. I think lots of folks try typing it out. I've done that. I tend to try to do that more typing, but honestly, I don't think it works as well. Right. It's easier. There's less friction for me to start it because I'm like at a keyboard.
Yeah.
But actual writing things down is hugely helpful for understanding your own thoughts. And
yeah. Helps you process things, man. And we may talk about it in a future episode, but here's my journal right here. I've got this notebook. Now, I do have an online journal, and I have journaling prompts that pop up that help me. But one thing, a book I recently read is called The Bullet Journal Method. When you're just writing in a book, the issue is finding your thoughts that you wrote previously and being able to refer back to them. And the Bullet Journal Method, maybe we'll go into it, but that method is actually a way to organize your stuff so that you can go back and find it.
Oh, interesting.
And it really does help. So it's a to-do list for the day. You're planning your day, but also intermingled with that are you put your thoughts to paper. Hey, I'm struggling with this, or I had this meeting, it didn't go well. I had this interaction with my spouse, and here's how it went, and here's how I was feeling at the time. And he gives some examples in the bullet journal method of how people have really changed their lives by just getting rid of the stuff and activities and people and everything in their life that are just not conducive to growth.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll talk about that next episode. But
because I like that idea of being able to go back and look at things, because that's one of the things that I'm not good at, because part of it is it's not very easy to.
How do you go back and find that? And even my online journal, it'll come back. Like I use day one for an online journal, and that's more for like studying and doing stuff like that. But every year, when you hit the anniversary of a journal entry, it might remind you, hey, last year you were thinking about this. But you have to do things in those online journals to be able to go back and reference stuff, pinning things, starring things, making them favorites or something like that. With this bullet journal method, though, I'm really pleased with it, and maybe we'll talk about it more in a future episode. Right?
Cool.
But that's a good place to wrap up here. And I just want to close out with this. Let's go back to that story of the two millionaires. Ronald Reed, he was this humble guy, quiet millionaire, but he treated money like a garden. He cultivated that garden and it flourished. And then you look at Richard Fuscone. He lived a flashy lifestyle that was funded by debt. So he was focused on the trappings of wealth. He lived beyond his means, even though he was already a multimillionaire making a killing. He leveraged that and got himself into debt. And when the real estate market crashed, the economy tanked, he lost it all. So here's my why for building wealth. And James, you can share yours as well. I'm sure they're similar. We haven't talked about this, but I'm sure they're similar. Let's start with this. We need to forget the idea of having control, because so much is out of our control, especially with the economy. There are things going on globally that can impact our retirement savings. So just put that out there at the beginning. We can do everything right, and then maybe a market collapse can just wipe everything out. You never know. Over time, though, generally speaking, over a couple of decades, your money should increase. But forget that idea of having control. We don't have that. So here are my simple goals for building wealth. I want to have time for building relationships. I want to have flexibility to choose my trajectory in life. And if you're built up enough wealth to where you can leave a job that's not good for your health, or if you can not take a job that's not conducive to family life, having a bit of wealth really gives you that flexibility to choose trajectory in life. And then another reason, another why for building wealth for me is just doing work I enjoy on a calendar that I'm setting. And then also being part of something bigger than myself. If you've built up some level of financial freedom, you have the ability to go out and choose what you're going to dedicate your time and energy to. And this is what, from the Psychology of Money, the author said this. He said, quote, controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. James, you want to share anything about your why?
No, I mean, that resonates about 100%. It's being able to make choices as to what to do with your time and how you leverage that time with others and for your family, and having time to do this podcast, right?
It's nice.
It's nice, but still having a job and being able to make choices and have that job where you feel like you are helping people and doing other things is right. That's also nice to have a choice. The choice to work from home instead of driving an hour to work and sitting in an office all day and driving back home.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's your why for building wealth? And we'd love to hear from you. So if you want to share those with us, there's an option to send us a text here in the episode description, or you can email us at feedback@clutteredpath.com, or follow us on any of the social media networks and shoot us a message. But look for our contacts here in the episode description, and we'd love to hear from you. Your thoughts, James?
We absolutely would. That would mean a lot to us. Looking forward to next time.
Have a good one, folks. We'll see you on the path.